Thank you. Hello.
I liked Kingston 50 years ago when a dog could take a nap in the middle of Kentucky Street. That's back pretty quick.
I was
Yeah,
gonna tell
I
you,
bet.
wait till they start replacing that 40 bridge, and you're gonna see some, and that'll take a while.
Which bridge? This one?
They're gonna go from the Kingston intersection to the Midtown, or Kingston ramp to the Midtown ramp. Just that section, expanding it to 6 lanes. I'm sure eventually they're gonna 6-lane it all, but that specific, the earliest it will get started, I think they said would be 2024.
We've made somebody mad. There's other places they could work.
Well, apparently that bridge has some issues, so they gotta replace. They said, they're calling it a replacement, but they're not replacing it. They're just adding a lane on each side, so I'm still confused as to why they call it a replacement, but.
They knocked out that one at the dam pretty damn quick.
Mhm.
Up at our city.
Yeah, but that was a brand new bridge. This one, they're gonna,
It should be easier.
should be, and they said they're gonna be able to keep up, oh, sorry. Welcome to the City of Kingston Planning Commission. I call this meeting to order. Mr. Williams, if you'd like to call the roll, please.
Chair Wright,
Here.
Vice Chair Lovin, Secretary Pickle,
Here.
Mayor Neal,
Here.
Mr. Botkin.
In spirit only.
I'll take that as a yes. Mr. Clifton, Mr. Frog,
Here.
Mr. Farmer, Mr. Owens,
Here.
Mr. Tipton. Chair, we have a constitutional majority. We have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. If everyone has had a chance to look over the minutes from last month's meeting, if there's no corrections or deletions, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Owens,
I'll say.
second by Mr. Bodkin.
Chair Wright,
Yes.
Secretary Pickle,
Yes.
Mayor Neal,
Aye.
Mr. Botkin,
Yes.
Mr. Frog,
Yes.
Mr. Owens.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing to report, Mayor, do you?
No, I do not this time. The city manager was unable to be here tonight, so he didn't have anything to report either.
Yes. Any other statements before we get started? Any other members? All right, this next session, we hear from the public. If there's anyone here from the public that would like to speak before we begin, that now is your time. Seeing none, we're gonna move on to the final plat review of re-subdivision of lots 1 through 4, Lakewood Heights subdivision, map 47G, Group A, parcels 1, 2, and 3. Have a copy of the plat in front of you.
Anybody here on, regarding that plat? Parcels 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Lakewood? Okay.
Any comments?
Is this anything more than just removing a property line?
This is simply a combination of lots, is it not,
Yeah, it
sir?
started out as 4 lots.
That's gonna be 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
He was just asking if this was, just a combination of lots.
Yes, there was, it was recorded originally in 1955 as 4 lot, well, it's a big subdivision, this is 4 lots out of it. It has since been sold partial lots to where now there's 3 parcels, but there's 4 original lots.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do is get 2 lots that will become 2 parcels.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we accept this plot.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
That was a
Motion by
Mayor.
Mr. Neal, second
Okay.
by Mr. Owens. I don't need to. You can go ahead and call the roll on the vote.
Okay. Chair Wright,
Yes.
Secretary Pickle,
Yes.
Mayor Neal,
Aye.
Mr. Botkin, Mr. Frog,
Yes.
Mr. Owens.
Yes.
Unanimous again, Chair.
Are you Mr. Litz?
I'm sorry?
Are you Mr. Litz?
No, I'm the.
You're the surveyor?
Yes, I'm the
Okay.
surveyor.
All right, thank you. I was gonna say, these people are my neighbors, so I can see their house right across the cove from us. All right, thank you. It's approved.
I'm sorry.
It's approved. The
Okay.
plat's been approved.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you.
That was quick. Next item on the agenda is beginning a review of the Kingston subdivision regulations. Mr. Williams is gonna give us a brief overview of what we're getting ready to do.
Okay, Chair Wright suggested that we go through the subdivision regulations and review them piece by piece and, determine if we need to make any changes, and, we can discuss any part of it, but I think we should do it, start at the beginning. And what I was just gonna start out with, since we have some new members, I was gonna say that I won't make a long treatise about how this all came about, but I will say that back in 1935, when the state legislature authorized cities and counties to have planning commissions, they also authorized planning commissions to have subdivision regulations. In fact, the state law says that a planning commission shall adopt regulations regarding the development of subdivisions. And state law gives great authority to planning commissions to do whatever they feel is necessary. Design, construction standards, whatever. It varies by place. Most cities and counties have gone and require asphalt, and they require a good base, and they require that the sub-base be compacted and all that sort of thing. But when I worked in Cott County, even as late as 1995, they only required a gravel surface, for example. And I don't know if they've changed that. Scott County, for example, where I've worked for a long time, doesn't have subdivision regulations, even though the state law says you shall. The state law doesn't give a time frame. But Scott County has never adopted subdivision regulations, and they've not had the development, I guess, pressures that other places, probably closer to Knoxville and less.
Was Scott County not on the news recently because that was where the Bitcoin mining operation was?
I know there's one in Claiborne County.
Oh, it was Claiborne County. Never
And
mind.
there's also one up near Elizabethton, I think.
Yeah, because it happened because they didn't have any kind of regulations, so that mining operation just set up in the middle of nowhere.
Claiborne County. I
Yeah.
mean, Claiborne County doesn't have zoning, Scott County doesn't, Campbell County doesn't, Granger County doesn't.
Yeah, they tried to sue, and the judge basically said
You
they
have
were.
no, on what grounds?
Yeah, right.
You've chosen not to regulate land uses, but anyway, but not that many counties have zoning, but you and Jefferson County where I work do, and, but I don't wanna get sidetracked, but, subdivision regulations theoretically are mandatory, but the state doesn't have any real teeth in that, I don't
Okay.
believe. Anyway, state law also defines what a subdivision is, and it says that, it's in your definition here that I've handed out. Basically, it says that it's any tract that's less than 5 acres or any division of property that would require road or utilities. So that really takes in almost all divisions of property. The ones that would be exempt would be the ones along existing roads that are 5 acres or greater. essentially, because they usually have utilities, and you normally wouldn't be extending utilities along an existing road to get, for the division of property. And so when we get a subdivision that comes before us, that, let's say it has 4 3-acre lots and a 6-acre tract that may or may not be shown, we're not interested in the 6-acre. It doesn't meet the definition of subdivision. Now, if they show it, we'll address it, but they don't have to show it as long as it has road frontage. And how much road frontage is required? My office has always maintained that the amount of road frontage that's required in the subdivision regulations, which would vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction possibly. So if it has 60 feet of frontage, I think we had a little bit of discussion about that with Mr. McKee. I can't remember the details, but I think he may have argued that part of it wasn't a subdivision, and I tended to disagree. So anyway, they define what a subdivision is, and it says at the planning commission that no plat, the state law also says no plat shall be recorded. Once you've got to the point of having a major road plan in place, which is the precursor to subdivision regulations, I'll go back to that in a minute, but unless it's been signed by the secretary of the planning commission. So the people can't just take a plat down to the courthouse and get it recorded, at least not legally. I'm sure everything's been done somewhere, sometime.
They do a pretty good job in our
and
registrar's
that's
office.
really admirable too, because they get a lot of pressure from people when they bring that stuff in, and they just have to stand firm. And that's why when we have plats, Bo signs them, and he even signs ones that are not truly a plat for recording purposes only under certain circumstances, and so does the county. And
Usually they put a little note on there.
Yeah, we put a
Right.
sticker on there that says, per the surveyor, nothing's changed, this isn't a subdivision, or, we're signing it for recording purposes only. The only way people skirt getting a signature, you see them try to attach a drawing of some kind
To a
of
deed.
survey to a deed, and they'll try to treat that like a plat, and I don't, obviously, there's nothing wrong with them recording a page, but
At that point, it's just a survey. It's not.
right, it's not really a plat, but
Okay.
sometimes just simple surveys of a piece of property, like if somebody's buying a house or selling a house, sometimes they get caught in a web, but that's when it comes into play where Bo can sign a survey or something, and get it recorded. In the subdivision regulations, I've handed out the latest, greatest edition, and it's
Yeah,
got.
the 2020 edition. I don't think many of us have seen these.
I know. When I went back into my into the computer, and I changed it, but I didn't put it in final form. By that I mean it still has strike through where we changed it, and it still has. You can't see it, but some of the senses might be real light. It's really on my computer. It shows up as red.
I don't remember adopting this, did we?
Well, no, we had some resolutions that made changes. For example,
Okay.
no colored ink on the plats.
Right.
That they be at 1 inch equals 100 scale. That kind of thing. And we did a few changes in that we have electronic copies. And a few things like that we had changed, but nothing really drastic beyond that.
No.
And we updated our checklist to reflect those things too.
That was my first question. Are these the only two checklists we have? Is preliminary plat and final plat? Okay.
Well,
Yeah, site
I'm
plan.
thinking of subdivisions.
So
Yeah.
that was the first thing that I noticed is a site plan checklist should probably be in here, because I know in the past, people would come in and, want a site plan checklist, and
Yeah,
typically we'd
I-
have trouble.
I don't know that
running
it
it down.
doesn't need to be in the subreg since it doesn't involve the subdivision of property.
Okay.
But it needs to be readily available from City Hall
Okay.
when
site
when somebody
plans are-
comes in with a development, a marina
Okay.
or something.
site plans are dictated by the zoning code, so.
Okay. That makes sense. Well, maybe that should be at the beginning of our zoning regs, just like this is at the beginning of our subdivision regs.
Okay, yeah. If you go to page 1, and we'll go through this real fast, The purpose basically of subdivision regulations is to make sure that when property's subdivided, the lots are buildable, they're adequately sized, they have utilities that are suitable to support a dwelling, and that they have a buildable area, and that the infrastructure is constructed to a level that it won't require constant maintenance by the city or the utility district. In other words, it protects the property buyers and it protects the city. And that's it in a nutshell. That's where really the rubber meets the road. If you go to page 3, I guess, if I get far enough away from the number.
Yeah, 3 is the first.
Yeah, and we have the preliminary and final plating requirements. And in a nutshell, you can read this, you can see where I've done a scratch out where it says Regional Planning Commission and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and Kelly correctly pointed out a couple of other things, like where it says recorded in the office of the Register of Kingston, City of Kingston. There is no register.
There is no register, I agree.
Right.
Okay.
So I would say it'd be Roane County Register of Deeds.
Oh, it would be. I don't know how that happened. I see the Register of the City of Kingston. I'm making note of that. Thank you. Anyway, the preliminary plat is designed to give the Planning Commission an idea of what is being proposed, what the lots will be like, what their size will be, what their design will be, and any proposed infrastructure, roads, utilities, everything from fire hydrants to, and drainage, anything. And the Planning Commission will take that preliminary plat, and I hope I'm not going too fast on this, but I'm not gonna go word for word, okay? But the whole idea of the preliminary plat is to give the Planning Commission an idea of what's being proposed, and if the Planning Commission approves it, it basically serves like a contract between the Planning Commission and the developer, and the developer can go forward in good faith with the planning, if the Planning Commission approves it, or approves it conditionally, and the developer can construct that subdivision and get the final plat prepared. And that way, when the final plat comes to the Planning Commission is obligated to make sure that the final plat is similar to the preliminary plat. There's always a few changes. For some reason, a lot line may change or this, that, but anyway, the whole idea is to make sure that it complies with the preliminary plat and that all the proposed improvements, everything from water lines, sewer lines, if required, drainage, roads, all that sort of thing is constructed to the standards that the Planning Commission has in the subdivision regulations in a later chapter. And that way the city can feel comfortable, if it's approved, in taking over that infrastructure, or the utility district taking over that infrastructure.
But we have to accept it. Like they can dedicate it.
Yes.
But we have to accept it.
Yes, that's an excellent point. The Planning Commission's approval of a final plat does not mean that it's necessarily the city street, or part of the utility district's or water or sewer system. The Planning Commission, when it approves a plat, is stating that it has been constructed to the standards of the subdivision regulations, or a surety, like a bond or letter of credit or escrow account or something's been put in place to ensure that those improvements are made. And why would that happen? Sometimes
we know
developers
that
want to
it's
get
happened
the
right
money
here.
on the front end,
Mhm.
so they can make those improvements, and which is perfectly legitimate, but we would make sure Mr. McPherson approved any of those documents to make sure they were legally enforceable.
Yeah, we have a
and that sort of
subdivision
thing.
in Roane County currently, very, a high dollar home subdivision, where the main road was never completed. And so I know the county planning commission has been dealing with that, and they made sure that he took out a bond, and they were getting ready to pull the plat from approval, out of the Register of Deeds, so
I think I'm familiar with that
you
one.
should be.
It was a Caldwell development, as I recall.
It was.
Yeah, and
I think it's being taken care of now, but that's the point, is to make sure that, you know, just because someone comes in and says, I'm gonna develop this subdivision, I think in that case, the bond was not done.
I think it expired.
Yeah, that's what it was. The bond expired and the road never got done. So here you have these 500,000+ homes and a road
Substandard.
that was, I believe, adopted by the county,
Yeah,
that was substandard.
potholes and all sorts of things, as I understand it. I've not been to that property, but,
Before, yeah. This first section under general, there's one more thing.
Okay.
In the third paragraph,
What
the
page?
person, in the first section, third paragraph, it starts out, the subdivider shall consult early and informally, and then later on it says, this will enable him to become, just if we could make that change to, this will enable the subdivider.
Yeah.
Instead of saying he, she, they, it, just make it the subdivider.
Okay, I need to,
It says this will enable him to become thoroughly.
this will enable, I see it now, okay.
Yeah, if we could just put, this will enable the subdivider, since that's how
Sure.
the paragraph started out.
Right, it
Did
needs
you
to be
say something
consistent.
there?
I was gonna say, what is, so we're reviewing these subdivision regulations.
Yeah.
That 2 years ago,
No, we never adopted it.
adopted one since 2016.
okay.
We
This,
adopted
he
some,
had
we
started
did-
working on it in 2020.
we had a few changes of, 3 or 4 years ago, a few changes. And we'll come across those in a minute. It was to this, we wanted to make sure that the plats were the correct size to be recorded. And, like I said a minute ago, like, you know, the colored ink, we didn't want colored ink because apparently that fades in the,
Yeah, we just had a red ink. We just had a red ink, oh, it was this one. That's what I was a little worried, when it came through digitally, it was all in red.
yeah.
It was very difficult to read.
I printed one out and it was in black, plus Kelly left one for me and I came through the other day, so.
I do have a question, in the second paragraph, where it talks about, plats administratively. I know we've had some informal discussions about this prior, but it talks about, no more than 2 tracks is eligible for administrative review. Is that ending with 2 tracks? Is that, I know it implies that you're taking one piece and making it into no more than 2, but a lot of times where we have, just like the one tonight, where
4
it's
into
4
2.
going to 2, well, okay, does that qualify? If you're ending with 2, is that sufficient?
So, or what you're saying,
He asked me a few weeks ago, was he eligible for
Okay.
administrative, and I told him I wasn't comfortable doing that because I wasn't clear on the way this was worded,
That
whether or
makes
not we
sense.
had that authority. So,
however, the plat of the subdivision passed. Well, it says no more than 2 lots, and he wasn't,
well, but he wasn't really subdividing one piece
Right.
into 2 lots. He was taking 3 pieces that used to be 4 pieces and
Mhm.
making 2 pieces, and I think common
Let
sense
me
says.
think about that. We might be able to reword that.
I
You
think
know-
common sense says it should be, but I wasn't necessarily comfortable making that call on my own.
Right.
Like, you know.
I'm not even sure if you really want to get technical. I don't know. I've never checked court cases or anything. There's probably never been any. But you know, when you're putting 4 lots into 2, are you really subdividing property? You're replatting property. But you know, you're not creating lots, and sometimes
But
I
you are
wonder.
creating lots. You're creating 2 new ones from 3 or 4 old ones.
Okay, well that's a good point.
I mean, that's sort of
too.
how I pitch it to people when I try to explain why this is necessary. You're basically, when you move a lot line, the lot on both sides becomes a new lot that is different than the old one, and you know.
makes sense.
I agree with that. That's
They had to do
Yeah.
this to apply with septic rules.
Say what?
They had to do this to get enough property to put a septic system in.
They're on public utility,
Are they?
yeah. Yeah, we're all public, like I said, they're right across the way from me. City has public utility all through there.
I'm lost. Okay.
One little comment about 5 acres not being a subdivision. That's also, the same, almost the same definition for the health department, the state health department, TDEC.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go out and certify properties that are 5 acres or greater. There's an assumption, as I understand it, there's an assumption under state law that if it's 5 acres or greater, it should perk. And so, otherwise, the state health department has to approve lots, but
Mhm.
not if they're 5 acres or greater.
Now, there are rules that prevent chopping off 5 acres and making it landlocked, correct?
No
Yes.
property can be sold in the state of Tennessee now, without access.
And that falls right within the definition of subdivision too, if it doesn't have road frontage.
Right, but
Yeah.
the 5 acres would not exempt it if it had no road frontage.
Exactly,
Okay.
except in Madisonville, when I worked there one night, and they had a developer there from Chattanooga. That's a different story.
And you've already made the notice of the changes in here where it needs to be municipal instead of regional.
I have, I've probably missed a couple, but I can run that through find and replace. I saw a couple where I didn't have a strike through on it.
Okay.
But it is purely municipal now.
So I think there's no other changes until we get to well,
If you look at the bottom of page 4,
wait, Kelly has another note
Oh,
on here.
okay,
In section 2, at the bottom of that paragraph, again, it says county register. I think it would be appropriate to write out register of deeds. Not everybody knows what a register is.
okay. I agree.
And then, on, paragraph 3, the same thing, on approval of said preliminary sketch, he may proceed, just put the subdivider. I would just, all throughout the document where it says he, put subdivider.
That's a little bit sexist anyway. I said it, nobody else has to say it. I don't think when all this was written, it was intended to be that way. but-
No, not at all. It's just common language.
We define major subdivisions as, anything with, 8 or more lots, and minor subdivisions is 7 or fewer that front on an existing street. And then the administrative review subdivision is what, Bo talked about a minute ago.
And again, here it says subdivision containing no more than 2 lots fronting an existing street.
Right,
No new streets or road.
and no improvements.
Yep.
If it requires improvements, we'd need to see a preliminary plat. Anyway, with the major subdivision, we do require preliminary plats. And if it's a minor subdivision, 7 or fewer lots, we don't require a preliminary plat. They can go straight to a final plat if there's no improvements. That's the way most sets of subdivision regulations I've dealt with have been. Getting down to preliminary sketch plat for major subdivisions only, that requires a wealth of information, so like I said, the planning commission will know exactly what's being proposed. It has a topographic line requirement, so we can see the slope and, you know, of not just the roads that might be proposed, but the lots, and see, you know, see if they're like extremely difficult to get to, or if they're appear like they might be unbuildable due to slope. We require the standard information like a north arrow, it's graphic scale, so you can determine distances. Date, north point reference, I won't read those. It requires a whole bunch of information like that, including utilities and roads, and planning commission can require also that there be road profiles so that we can see the slope, and when you can actually put a scale to them and you can see the site distance as measured from just a few inches above the asphalt surface to 4.5 feet above the roadway. You can put a line across there and see if, you know, if it does it. You can do it that way.
This first section, section D, preliminary sketch plat, you have the section marked out to the planning commission, a completed preliminary plat checklist and 12 copies. You have marked that out. And then this one section where it says copies of the plat should be conveyed to the planning commission box at the Kingston Municipal building.
I've got a question mark about that. I don't know.
Yeah,
what that
I would
means.
just mark out copies of the plat should be conveyed to the city manager's office at the Kingston
Yes.
City Hall.
I agree.
Maybe even the address. I don't know.
We could put Kelly's personal phone number in there too. and-
Sure, she would love that.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding, Kelly. Like I said a minute ago, at the top of page 8, street or road profiles may be required by the planning commission. And you can see the list on page 8 of all the things that are required. Location maps everything so you can determine where it is. The names of adjacent property owners and subdivisions, date, north point, etc. Plans of proposed utility layouts, water, sewer, gas, fire hydrants, electricity. Proposed street names, topographic contours at 5 feet. Location sketch map, like I said, so we can find it, and anyway. Most of this stuff is like not stuff developers or surveyors have to do this almost everywhere they go, in any jurisdiction in East Tennessee. And
That's why I
probably-
always find it fascinating that we have plats come in here that are missing such
Obvious.
relevant and obvious information when it's here in black and white.
I don't think I've ever gotten a complaint about our preliminary plat process.
Right.
But the final plat process causes such great consternation from many sides.
Well, even this gentleman that just left, he said he usually is Blount County and Knox County. He said he's never had to turn in a lot of this stuff, so he had to go back and redo his.
What do you remember what parts he said that
One thing, I think it was the tangent, I think around the, he said they don't require that. I don't know if it was just different verbiage that they used, I don't know, but there was 2 or 3 different things that he, when he was filling out his checklist, when
the checklist.
he came down here with his plat, he noticed that
Let's see.
some of the stuff on there, so he went back to his office and fixed it and got them reprinted, and automatically signed done.
I don't see tangent.
Right around the, where it says lit and circle.
Radius, center
Oh,
line,
the
and
radius.
tangent
Okay.
Distance for center line or curve through property.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Let's move on to the final plat.
Okay. Final plat, in summary, is an engineering plat that ends up being recorded at the courthouse once it's approved. And all the, infrastructure is either improved or there's a surety to ensure that that the improvements are made. A lot of, letter of credit, bond, escrow account, different forms like that are normally used. And a lot of developers, like I said a minute ago, want to, do that so they can start selling property before the improvements are made. Final plat needs to have every bit of engineering for every information on it because it's gonna serve as a permanent record of the subdivision. And that's what's recorded at the Register of Deeds office in Roane County. We should never really sign a preliminary plat because it could accidentally or intentionally get signed. I mean, and recorded by either mistake or intention. And, so that we would not want that to happen. So anyway, it's gotta be the final plat. Some places will not approve a plat contingent on any conditions, like,
A final plat.
right. And, that's up to the planning commission's discretion. I think certain things are not worth taking a chance on and certain things might be.
If they're missing a period or a cross T, that's one thing. If they're
If they
missing
don't have
water
health
lines,
department approval,
right?
that's a little more dangerous. And what it does is, of course, the secretary wouldn't sign it until it's agreed upon, at least by me and our chair and secretary, that all the conditions have been met. But it still kind of throws it in whoever's lap who's responsible to make sure. And something simple is one thing, but you know, something a little more complicated or engineering wise and that sort of thing, I don't think it's a good idea, especially health department. If
I mean,
you
after
have
the-
territory that,
After the whole Lad Landing debacle 20 years ago, you know, there was a hard line, thou shalt not sign anything outside of a meeting, period. And that is slowly sort of gone away to the point where we sign practically nothing at a meeting at this point. I mean, nobody brings anything in here with signatures because they're not confident that it's gonna pass. They assume that we're going to find something that needs to be redone, and therefore getting signatures is a waste of their time. So, you know, I don't know that we necessarily wanna take a hardline stance on it, but it sort of, it ebbs and flows over time. And I mean, 'cause when was the last time somebody had something to sign in a meeting? It's rare these days.
well, I think a lot of it depends on whether we're talking about a major subdivision with infrastructure or one that's,
Sure, I
Um,
agree.
the
All the
planning
smaller ones,
commission-
they won't go get the signatures.
right.
Okay, this,
We can be as tough, we can be as hardline as you feel comfortable on that. Different planners have different stances on that sort of thing. I've always been one to be a little bit flexible, but, I don't want, in any recommendations I make, I don't want to put the planning commission or city at jeopardy. So if you feel like ever I've been a little too lenient on a recommendation like that, I urge you to do what you feel like you need to do, okay? I'm just saying that in passing.
okay, the final plat section, the section 2, it's got some changes. Of course, regional will be struck from the entire document and replaced with municipal. Again, this little section here, copies of the plat conveyed to the planning commission box at Kingston, that'll be changed. But there is one section at the end, I believe it's the last sentence. It says, "One copy shall be retained in the records of the planning commission. One copy shall be retained by the planning staff." But this last section, "One copy shall be provided this is a typo. provided to any utilities instead of, there's something missing there, provided any utilities department or utility district as applicable.
I've never had that come up. I always get 2 copies, one for me and one for the planner. I've never actually given one to a planner, but I always get 2 copies to keep for our records. And
I don't really need a copy of record. I always keep a copy of the preliminary because I need to make sure that they conform with the final plat to the preliminary plat. But there's really no reason for me to have a final
For you.
plat. Yeah.
Right. Just
When we
as long.
update our city maps, we usually do it by the tax records. Once those changes are made. But I think the city should, and I think it's good for the utilities. I've never been involved in transferring a plat like that. And I don't think there's a need for me to actually do that, but I think the utilities people, whoever they might be warned.
Well, it should be to any utility department. It's weird
Or
that
to
it
the
says.
affected utilities.
Well, it says utilities department.
Well,
I
It just,
know.
in theory, well, I guess there could be more than one. It could be utilities departments or
Oh, like that's my point. It says to any utilities department or utility district. Sounds weird to just be utility department or utility district, but yeah. I don't think there's any other changes until we get to section 6. Wait, where is section 6?
No, there's not one.
Oh, okay.
That's
We've got a whole section, let's see, there, under section 5, there's a section 6, section
oh, okay, I had
7, and then it goes into the plat signatures.
I had trouble with formatting at this part today, cause when I called this up on the computer, it wasn't 100%, and I tried to format it, and, I don't know why formatting and me don't get along very well.
Well, the one section 6 is, talking about certificates. Certification showing that the applicant is the landowner and dedicates streets for right-of-way and any sites of public use. Certification by a surveyor or engineer of the
After I should have to be a 6 right
right. That's
Right.
I'm looking at the old one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There should be a 6.
Certification by surveyor or engineer to the accuracy of survey and plat and placement of monuments. Certification of approval of utilities, water and sewer. Certification of subsurface sewage disposal.
if applicable,
Certification that all streets and appurtenances have been installed in accordance with established standards. And then there's a certification from the City of Kingston E911 coordinator. City of Kingston does not have an E911 coordinator.
I didn't put that in there, by the way, this was already all there.
Oh, I'm not being accusatory.
No, I just want everybody to know that I didn't go through and just make
So,
stuff up.
section 6, section F, subsection F. Now do we get a certification for the 911?
Yes.
It's just not city doesn't have one, so.
Correct.
It-
They
is
go
it-
to the 911 office down in the industrial park and
Okay,
And that's
so,
for the road names, right?
yes,
that it,
and numbers.
addresses. Yeah,
Number
street
address.
numbers.
Do they give numbers out just for lots, or do they
Yes.
wait until the house is situated?
Nope,
Nope, they give it out.
Okay, some places don't do it until the house is built.
no, they do.
Okay.
And you'll see plats, recorded, cause I see legal descriptions messed up all the time, like, for instance, this plat in front of us, I just realized he did not read.
They give them an address.
Oh, no, 1R. So he has like 1R on here, but sometimes somebody will put a number from the 911 office of what that address is gonna be. And sometimes some attorney comes and makes the legal description and will put down the lot number as the 911 address number. So it's
Oh.
it's been an issue, but they do give the number address, even if there's no house on it
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
So that section F, certification from the county. E911.
911 coordinator, yeah.
Mhm.
Roane County, I got you.
And weren't we talking, and it goes on, certification for electrical lines, certification for planning commission, certification for responsibility of maintenance of private streets. Weren't we talking, and I cannot remember the discussion,
Yes.
about certifications, that we needed to add one or let go of one?
I don't think it was either. I think it was, right now, if somebody moves a lot line an inch,
Uh-huh.
they're required to get all these certifications, and I get a lot of pushback. You can imagine from who,
Mm-hmm.
but certain surveyors more than others. But I get a lot of pushback that if it's something minor, all these things, nothing relevant to most of these certifications is changing, like, water, sewer, electric, all that kind of stuff. And so they push back on having to get those signatures as if it was a brand new lot. Again, I usually treat it that way because it is different than it used to be. Therefore, it's a new lot as far as I'm concerned.
And you don't have the authority to
Right, and I don't have the authority to
go
not,
against the subdivision regulations.
to not require them to get all these signatures. So, but there was talk at times in recent past about making some exceptions for certain things. I'm not sure exactly what they would be.
So what is your experience in other areas regarding certification signatures when the lot doesn't?
When it's not really required, not necessary, really.
Well, if they're on a city street that is known to have water and sewer, do they really need to go get that signature?
Yeah, most of them are worded like as if you're putting that stuff in,
Right.
and it not as if it's existing. It seems like 2 or 3 years ago, I wrote some examples. In fact, you may
did.
recall, and of rewording some of that. And I thought about that when I was driving here today. If why don't I email Kelly
Yeah, this whole
some
section.
alternatives? And we may want to have some alternatives, not to just to make the world a better place when certain things are not absolutely necessary.
I would. One of the reasons that I've not been too gung ho on changing a lot of it in the past is because the plat does serve as a sort of a standalone record. And so if you're buying a piece of property that has been, re-subdivided or lot lines have moved and stuff, you'd like to be able to pick up the most recent plat and say, this has the information I need, and not have to go back to 1950 something when the electrical lines were certified or whatever.
What if we did something like if it's like something like this, when the property was previously platted and signatures were gotten, if it has a previous plat where all
Reference
that
that
has already
plat?
been certified?
Reference that plat.
No, not necessarily, but the certification, the need for certification signatures. If they've already had an established plat previously and the signatures were gotten, why would they need to do it a second time?
I would like I would like us to consider having something on there implying the status of this, just so that it is still on record on the most current plat. Whether they need to go get signatures or not, we can argue that. But
Okay.
but I would like there to be something that at least says, signature not required because it was previously gotten, and either reference it or
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody got a better idea about how to do that. But the idea of just completely leaving it off and leaving people to wonder, has it been addressed?
Yeah, so what you're saying is the certifications stay, but there needs to be another way of explaining why a signature wasn't on there?
Right.
Okay.
Either it's not applicable, or it's already been done, or some way of conveying that to somebody who is looking at this most recent plat and they know that it hasn't just been omitted or
It's almost like we could put 2 different certificates on here for several of the items.
right. One of them
This
is
one,
you're
here's
installing
one, if
new
you're installing
utilities. Another one
utilities,
is
here's,
they're pre-existing. who certifies that, that's the real problem. Even if we know they're pre-existing, does the surveyor take that on? Does
City manager?
Does the city
does it-
manager take that on? Like, who wants to be responsible for saying, yeah, that already exists, you don't have to go any further? I don't know.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
I'm not opposed to just making everybody get signatures, but that is the number one thing I get pushback about.
Well, sometimes you almost feel like you need to write not applicable, and then what do you do with it, right?
Right.
I know.
Kind
I
of
know.
like what we have to do with the health department.
Well, we have had to do that with the health department a time or two, just because they wouldn't play ball with us, but
And the health department won't evaluate a piece of property, like I said earlier, if it's over 5 acres. They won't do it if there's an existing system on there. They don't even go there. I'm talking about T-Deck. I'm not talking about where your utilities are in place.
Okay, well, this is a good
Let
stopping
me
point.
think about that, and I'll look at what we talked about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, we need to, I would like to, discuss this section more if you want to give us more examples, maybe. And then this is a good stopping point before we get to Article 3. We'll do this, move on to the next section, but
I would like to see the approval of water and sewer be separated.
from utilities.
Well, no, separate from one another.
Oh, okay.
I agree with you on
I
that.
agree.
Because we do have,
Wait.
it was more prominent when we had a planning region, which is not the issue anymore, but there are places that have water and not sewer, and so if it's one line and Kevin signs it, you're not really sure what he's certifying.
Water or sewer.
And you don't
Or
have to
both.
want to mark all over it either.
Right. And so,
So we just have utilities. It just
we
says,
have certified
okay.
approval of utilities, water
Okay.
and sewer, but
Some of this stuff it happened a long time ago, and somebody's copied somebody else's work.
Yeah, of course.
and
Copy
just-
and paste.
Yeah.
That's
one
what
final-
anybody good does.
One final word about
Rip
the
off and
subdivision
duplicate.
regulations that you have and most places have. They came out of a format that I think the federal government did back in the late 30s or mid 30s perhaps, and they had certain major things in it like what you've got, and what's happened is they've just all become similar over time, and planners in the past have cut and pasted and used what they thought were tried and true methods. So, but it's all open to
well, like you said, so many of these certifications are probably, reasonably solid for new development, but so many of the plats that we have are replats or re-subdivision or
Very
or
rare
mo-
that we get a
moving
new
property
subdivision.
lines, and therefore, obviously, they're not installing new utilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's just moving a property line, and so it feels not applicable, even though it still needs to be addressed.
It's almost like there should be a separate set for what kind of plat you have.
Yeah, for one with existing facilities. And
Okay, well, we'll put a place marker
Yeah.
in that section because we'll definitely have to
I
discuss
made
that
note of
more.
it. I'm gonna send you something at least for discussion purposes.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the 190 lot subdivision going into Rockwood?
I thought it got declined. I'm thinking of another one then.
No, I was at the meeting, it was approved.
Good luck. Because the last one that got, I believe, it was just about a month ago, wasn't it? It
was
was
2
it
weeks
was a
ago.
new type of subdivision, and I tried to look up the definition. Apparently, like the drainage system, it was some kind of drainage system that was done naturally. And it was, I want to say it was 30-40 lot subdivision, and they declined it because of, people came out against it. But do you know what section of Rockwood?
Yeah, right in back of Walmart.
Oh,
Under certification of subsurface disposal, page 10, what is not required if 4A is applicable? What is 4A?
yeah. What is 4A? Yeah, 4A of what?
Sounds like it's almost like a health department regulation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question.
That is a great question.
I don't know what 4A is either.
Is there any other discussion before we adjourn?
Adjourn.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's early.
Get out of here. Gary's made the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Anybody make a second?
Yeah, we all made a second.
Okay.
I did a title search on that, but I didn't know it was going to be a subdivision.
Are you talking about the